All right, let's stay with the subjects around the extradition processes and how they unfold. Are they likely to also, continue taking a long time, or does it, become easier when the parties agree to the extradition? We heard from Nhlanhla there that South Africa has now put forward its formal extradition request. So let's now see then, how does this then unfold, especially when it comes to the process? How long is it likely to take? What are some of the factors that could be considered by the courts here when it has to make its decision? Let's speak now to Eisenberg and Associates Immigration Attorney Gary Eisenberg, who joins us live now. Gary, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Always a pleasure. Let's speak about, the process that unfolds now, because the NPA is saying that the process of extradition has begun in Eswatini for the two suspects. But what can we expect then to unfold?
Well, they are in custody in Eswatini, and they are going to appear, so I understand, at a postponed date of the 9th of April. Now, we still don't know whether they're going to oppose the extradition or they're going to simply concede and make arrangements for their delivery, their surrender to the South African authorities, prison authorities, police authorities. These details have not yet been worked out. But if they are going to take counsel's opinion and they're going to decide to stand their ground and to oppose extradition proceedings on one or a number of different grounds, then it is a question of time. It's a question of how the magistrate in Eswatini is going to determine each one of these issues one by one during these extradition proceedings, which could drag on. And at the end of the day, if the magistrate had to commit them to prison, awaiting the decision of the relevant minister of cabinet, I think it's the Prime Minister in Eswatini who needs to decide whether or not to surrender them to South Africa, they can take the decision of the magistrate on review to a higher court. So how long will that process take? It's anybody's guess.
It does sound like it won't be a straightforward process then, because a lot of people are thinking that maybe it could be easier. But there's also another question from, quite a number of people, including myself, that if you then are hearing that they were in the country illegally, isn't that automatically a straightforward deportation?
Well, it probably isn't. And the reason it isn't is once deportation proceedings begin, once the provisional request took place, and it did in terms of the SABC protocol on extradition, then all parties are really locked into the framework of the extradition process. And in a crude sense, in an ironic way, the accused, the Ndemande brothers, are protected by the extradition process. They are not now susceptible to deportation. They're locked into the extradition proceedings and protected by it until the very end.
So, I mean, one of the things that they were talking about during what has come out so far is issues around safety. This could play a role, especially when the extradition matter is then heard. I suppose it could be one of the grounds that they may argue not to be extradited back to South Africa?
Well, that's not one of the grounds, safety. If, for example, they raise the spectre of an unfair trial in South Africa, or that punishment is going to be cruel and inhuman, they can raise that as a defense in terms of the SABC protocol and extradition. And I'm not sure if they would get away with it. Yeah. They seem to have raised the spectre of being in police custody. That's what has been quoted in the press. And if so, there is no doubt about it that both authorities, their legal team and the South African state or their representatives can come to terms with to which particular authority are they going to be delivered to in South Africa in very practical ways, to the prison authorities, to the police. And this is subject to negotiation once they've conceded that they're not going to oppose extradition. So I'm not really clear on what they're reticent about. It could simply be being afraid of police in Eswatini and in South Africa, and there seem to be mixed signals about that in the media.
Quite interesting. And I mean, while you talk about the issue of a fair trial and the issue of safety, we also saw it, come out in that process when the Guptas, there was that application to try and extradite them back to South Africa. But now, yesterday, the SABC learning through the minister that they are still trying to pursue this particular case. And he says that, but they're still shooting in the dark, because they're still none the wiser as to the reasons why the UAE decided to rule the way it did. So in light of all of that, then, can we expect them back in South Africa anytime at all?
Well, if you're speaking about the Guptas, I don't think that's a mystery in real terms. We all know, because the press was following this molecule by molecule through time, that South Africa had ears on the ground in the right places in the UAE from the very beginning. And I have no doubt about it that our prosecutorial authorities know exactly what went wrong there and what the position is of the UAE authorities. And I don't think there's any mystery whether or not they've disclosed that into the public domain. I think they're not shooting in the dark. I think they know exactly what occurred, and it may be irreparable at this stage. That's my understanding.
So then, if they possibly know the reasons, and then they say to the media that they don't know the reasons, and they're still trying to get them back. So in light of all of this then that has happened, are you hopeful that this case may be cracked one day? Because they're saying that they're not giving up the efforts.
I've been misquoted when I express a view on the Gupta brothers. It's a very controversial subject. I'm not even sure if the Gupta brothers reside any longer in the UAE. I don't know their whereabouts. I don't represent them. But I'm not particularly hopeful that they are going to get the Gupta brothers back anytime soon. That's my personal opinion.
Sure. Gary, it's always an interesting take when one looks at these extradition processes and hears your thoughts on how they're likely to unfold. So let's see then how this matter in Eswatini unfolds, because there's quite a number of matters around extradition that are currently out there. But let's see how the developments are. I do appreciate your insights and for taking us through, the legal processes there. That was Eisenberg and Associates Immigration Attorney, Gary Eisenberg.